Well, welcome to our Easter week Bible study. We're still going to be in Genesis tonight. We're going to keep on going where we were. I do hope, though, that we will see you all Easter Sunday morning. If you're watching at home and can all be here Easter Sunday morning, it would be very valuable for you to come. Also, we have a Good Friday service, Friday at 7 p.m., that you can come and be a part of, and we would just love to see you here. We also have a sunrise service Sunday morning at 7 a.m. that you can come and also be a part of. It's going to be good stuff. We want to see you there. By way of credits, our normal director and producer is Wendy, but tonight we have assistant director and producer Lindsay running the show back there. So that means I can run over and she can't do anything about it. Okay, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, that we get the opportunity to look into Genesis 21 tonight. How I pray that you would speak to us about faith and about your provision and about your plan and how you take care of us. We thank you, Lord. Amen. Amen. Genesis 21 is where we're at. I'm going to read you the story of the birth of Isaac, verses 1 through 7. The Lord came to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the appointed time God had told him. Abraham named his son who was born to him, the one Sarah bore to him, Isaac. And when his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and everyone who hears will laugh with me. She also said, who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne a son for him in his old age. Just like God had promised. I wonder tonight, as you sit here in front of me, if you have yet taken delivery of your new Tesla Cybertruck. Did you receive your Cybertruck yet? If you had reserved one back in 2019, you would have it now. You'd have had it for at least a few months. Every so often, every generation or so, there's a vehicle that comes out that absolutely shakes and shapes the vehicular world. In 1908, it was the Model T. Until the Model T, cars were a toy for the rich. They were not considered dependable or accessible for the average person. But with the Model T, Henry Ford said, you can have something more dependable, more reliable, and more affordable than a horse or mule. And it rattled the vehicle industry and shaped the vehicle industry all around the world. There have been quite a few others along the way. You might have heard of the Chrysler Airflow in 1934. It was the first car designed to take advantage of aerodynamics. A little bit funny looking. First car with headlights built into the fenders. First car made of an all-steel body. Not wood framed. Oh, General Motors came out and said that is the stupidest thing they've ever heard of, an all-steel body. It'll never catch on. And then by 1939, even the cheapest Chevy was an all-steel body. As much as we discount the Airflow today, it shaped the industry. Also in 1936, the Cord 810. It was the first front-wheel drive mass-produced American car and the first car with hidden headlights, the Cord 810. And the first car with a pre-selector electric shifting transmission. But it was not the first automatic transmission. That was Oldsmobile in 1940. The Hydra-Matic came out in 1940. People didn't think too much of it. But then World War II happened, and the Hydra-Matic was put into tanks. In 1946, Oldsmobile issued a car that was made for the returning vet who might be missing an arm or leg or have an injured limb. They didn't have to shift it. It was an automatic. And it was huge. You can't even hardly buy a manual transmission in the United States today. Then there was the Tucker 48. They only made 51 of them, but man, did they shape the American car industry. The first car to take safety in mind. Things like seatbelts, pop-out windshield, a light that turned as you were turning the corner, an engine in the back so it wouldn't land in your lap when you wrecked. You could roll a Tucker on its roof and back on its feet and still open the door and walk away. Oh, listen, the big three shut them down. They're such a threat. But even the design went on to shape cars for years to come. Oh, jump ahead a bit. 75 AMC Pacer. Laugh now, but it was a big deal then. The 2001 Pontiac Aztek. Oh, puke now. but it created the crossover, which is the cars everyone is driving today. The 2001 Chrysler PT Cruiser. Oh, you might think it's dumb now, but if you are old enough like me, you remember the waiting lists. People paying $10,000 over MSRP for a Chrysler PT Cruiser. It was different. It was special. It was interesting. It was a compact car that you could fit the whole family and a lot of stuff in. A whole new idea that has shaped the auto industry. And then, of course, the Cybertruck. Oh, you might not think too greatly of it now. I don't know why. First mass-produced car with a 72-volt electrical system. I don't know why we're still running 12 volts. We started that back in 1953. 72 volts makes so much more sense. First car with electric steering and brakes. Now, I don't like that much, personally, because I'm old school. But I can see where that's where we need to go. I can see that that's where we're going. The interesting thing about each one of these cars is as much as they shaped the industry and as much as they were a shock to the public, they were not a surprise. They had been talked about. These cars had shown up at auto shows and World's Fairs years in some case before public actually made them available. In more modern days, we learned about them by leaks to all kinds of media outlets, magazines, newspapers, TV shows, the internet, years before we could actually get our hands on the car. They changed everything. And they changed everything because we had to wait on them. If they just showed up, they would have blown over in a minute, but the waiting, the anticipation really did something. Tesla was introduced, the Cybertruck was introduced in 2019, pre-COVID, and there were 146,000 paid reservations in a day and a half for the Cybertruck. By March 2024, the wait for a Cybertruck was over 2 million orders. Over 2 million orders. But deliveries didn't start coming until November 30th of 2023, and by April 2024, only 4,000 had been delivered, and yet people still continued to wait. As of the end of 2024, Tesla was producing 1,300 units a week, 1,300 Cybertrucks a week. And back orders were finally starting to get caught up in October of 2024, a year after their release. And now if you want a Cybertruck, depending on a lot of variables, you'll probably have yours in about 4 weeks if you put in a fully paid order today. The interesting thing is, as much as the vehicles, you might not like the styling, but the vehicles are revolutionary in a lot of ways. And the interesting thing is, people know this, and so they ordered them, but a lot of people fell off. They paid a $100 reservation, non-refundable reservation up front, but then they backed out. When it was time to actually go ahead and go through with the order of their car, they said, I'd rather sacrifice the $100. I'm tired of waiting. I've done something else. Or perhaps my opinion of the car has been tarnished by the wait. David Laharoux of the United Christian Broadcasters, he said, years ago when I worked in the commercial industry, our logistics department decided to have a marketing slogan which said, a promise is not a until delivered. Interesting. He says the definition of the word promise is a declaration that one will do or refrain from doing something specified. Therefore, when one makes a promise or receives a promise, it is reasonable to expect it to be delivered. Get this. Disappointment often happens when promises are made from a trusted source, but never delivered. So, never forget that failing to deliver on your promise is the fastest way to lose trust. Many people waited on their Cybertrucks. Many people said, Tesla ain't all that great. They haven't delivered to me my Cybertruck. But once the Cybertrucks finally hit, and people could finally get their hands on them, we started getting feedback about the actual vehicle. Surprisingly enough, the vehicle received was the vehicle promised. I mean, they got what they asked for. They got what was promised. Oh, there were changes from the show truck. But when production vehicles were promised, that's what they got. And as I've listened to the complaints that have come out about the Cybertruck, surprisingly enough, they haven't been about the truck itself. Oh, we hear it's too big and heavy, but it was exactly what was promised. Oh, they say they don't like the design, but the design is exactly as promised. What really boils down when you hear complaints is people got tired of the wait. They say it took too long to produce this vehicle. And they say with the length of time, we should have gotten something better than what was promised. Not exactly as what was promised, but better than what was promised. And it occurred to me, as I thought about all this, that what it really boils down to is we just don't like waiting on promises. Even when the thing that is received is exactly what we want, exactly what was promised, we don't like waiting on promises. I had to buy a new suit the other day. Lost some in the move, and some of them my wife says you're not allowed to wear that anymore. So I had to buy a new suit. My son's getting married. Needed something very specific. I went into a particular store. I'm not here to promote that store, so I'm not going to tell you the name, but it was kind of a warehouse sort of a thing for men. Anyway, I went into that store and picked out a suit, and they said it needs to be tailored, and that's one of the reasons I go to that particular store is because I know it's going to be tailored correctly. And so I put it on, and they came out and they measured it, and they said, your suit will be ready to pick up on the 21st of this month. That's Monday. I'm going to go in Monday. Well, it'll probably be Tuesday, knowing my schedule, but I'm going to go in, and I'm going to expect that exactly what was promised will be delivered on that day. And I will not be disappointed. The 2 weeks that it's taken to do this is not disappointing to me. As long as on the day that it was promised, it is delivered as promised. I have a right to have those expectations. I have a right to have that met. And if it's not met, I'm going to be upset. Here's the thing. God has made us some very, very great and precious promises. Peter tells us in 2 Peter chapter 1 that these promises allow us to share in the divine nature, escaping the corruption in the world. These are some big-time promises. And some of those have been delivered, but many of them have not. Many of them, we have been waiting around 2,000 years for the return of Christ. We will not discover what we were made for until He comes. We will not be transformed into what we are longing to be until He comes. We have a deep longing in our hearts for the heaven, the new earth, the eternity we were made for. In every person, there's this longing for something more, and we will not discover it until Christ comes and remakes everything. We have been waiting for over 2,000 years. And people say, oh, it's never going to happen. Where is this coming that He promised? He didn't tell us when it was going to be. There are some promises where He has told us when it was going to be. And you know what? We say, if He would just tell me when it's going to happen, I would be fine. If He would just say, it's coming on the 21st, well, then I would be just fine. Oh, really? Because God told Abraham, know this for certain, your offspring will be resident aliens for 400 years in a land that does not belong to them, and will be enslaved and oppressed. However, I will judge the nation they serve, and afterward, that is after the 400 years, they will go out with many possessions. The Israelites had this information. This isn't something new. This information predates the nation, the family of 70 that went down to Egypt and became a nation of over 2 million people. They had this information. They knew the date they got to Egypt. They could have counted to 400 years. And when Moses showed up and said, I'm here to lead you out, they could have said, hey, we've been waiting for you. We're ready. Let's go. But no. They had the date. They didn't listen. Daniel chapter 12 is horrendously interesting, and I'm not going to go through it tonight. When we make it to Daniel, which at this rate will be what, maybe 4 or 5 months? No. When we make it to Daniel, we'll spend some time in chapter 12, because in Daniel chapter 12, the archangel who's speaking to Daniel tells him the exact day when the Messiah will walk into Jerusalem. I mean, do the math, the exact day. The day that we call the triumphal entry, when Jesus walks into Jerusalem. He tells him the date. And yet, Luke 19, as Jesus approached the city, he wept for it, saying, if you knew this day that would bring you peace. For the days will come on you when your enemies will build a barricade around you, surround you, and hem you in on every side. They will crush you and your children among you to the ground, and they will not leave one stone on another in your midst, because you did not recognize the date when God would visit you. He told them when he was coming, and they weren't ready. They missed it anyway. And so he says, listen, I'm coming. Be like the homeowner who knows he's going to get robbed but doesn't know the exact moment. Stay up every night with a shotgun across your lap. Be ready. And so, God said to Abraham years ago, depending on who's counting, what commentator's counting, and how you count, it was between 15 and 25 years ago. God told Abraham, in Genesis 15, you will have a son, your own son, born of Sarah. That will be your heir, and you're going to name him Isaac. He told him, but he didn't tell him when. I have a couple of questions. One question is, why didn't he tell him when? Wouldn't that have made it easier? I mean, he did eventually. Remember, eventually, when he came and visited him and they had dinner together there, when God was sending the guys into Sodom to check it out, he told them in a year. Or essentially, if you read the text like maybe a Hebrew would, Sarah could have been pregnant at that moment, in the year of life. So in the time it takes for a baby to grow, she's going to be holding a baby. I'm going to come back and see you. There will be a baby in her arms. He told him. So then he knew. But up until then, he didn't know. He didn't know. Why? And why did it take so long? Why did it take so long? Do we really need 20 or 25 years? Yeah, we did, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. The reason is faith. The reason is to build faith. Now, I can see why it's important to God that we take him at his word. And the basis of faith is taking God at his word. That's the basic building block of faith. God said it, I believe it. But this stretch of God said it, I believe it, and then I see it later, that's faith. That's the building of faith. Faith is knowing that your Father God is on the throne and in control, even when your senses tell you that nobody's on the throne and everything's out of control. Faith is patience and calm when your flesh tells you to panic because you're trusting in something bigger than yourself. Faith is knowing that something better is coming even after the end of this preliminary, temporary life that allows you to put up with life. It allows you to find joy. Read a great story about a man who was dying, an older guy, and his son, who was an adult. They knew he was dying. There was no qualm about this. The man had followed Christ all his life, was deeply in love with Christ. And they knew that any day now, this would be his last day, just any day. Any breath could be his last breath. And they were talking about this. And his son said, Dad, how do you feel about that? And the dad got a great big smile on his face. And he said, I feel like a little kid on Christmas Eve night. I can't wait for Christmas morning. Wow, isn't that cool? That's faith. That's faith. There's an old story that preachers like to tell about a grocer. Back in the days when there were private grocery stores, they would have a cellar beneath the store itself that was kind of like a root cellar. It was, naturally temperature adjusted. You could store stuff down there. But in the days before electricity, of course, it was dark down there. So what you'd do is you'd climb down a ladder. You'd go down there, wait for your eyes to adjust, and then grab stuff and bring it up. So this grocer is down in his cellar, and his son, who is an elementary school boy, comes home from school, and he can see the cellar door open, and so he goes up and he hollers down, Hey, Dad, you down there? And the dad says, Yeah, I'm down here. And he says, Well, do you need some help? He said, I'd love some help. Okay, well, the boy was really scared of going down the ladder. So the dad said, Well, just jump. Well, I can't jump. I can't see down there. And the dad says, Don't worry about it, son. I'll catch you. I'll catch you. Well, Dad, I can't see you. And Dad says, No, but I can see you. Just jump. Faith is that jump. my Father can see me. You know why I came to Christ? Everybody has a different reason. Some people, it's honestly because they're scared of hell. That's a perfectly legitimate reason. Some people, it's because they've experienced the love of Christ in their life some way. Maybe He spoke to them, or a vision, or they read the Bible and it spoke to them. For me, it was evidence. I started discovering the evidence for the truth of the Bible. The evidence for the resurrection is so overwhelming, there is not a single good historian on the planet who can legitimately doubt the resurrection of Christ. Well, come on then. It's just true. And I like being part of what's true. Doesn't take much faith when you've got that mountain of evidence. Sooner or later, that faith is going to have to be built. I have heard commentators say, faith is the lingua franca of heaven, the common language of eternity. Now, I don't understand. I would think, you know the line from the song, one day my faith will become sight. I'm going to see Him and I'm going to know. And that's what we bank on. That's what we rest on. That one day, I was listening to, I'm not going to tell you it was bluegrass because I don't want you to know I'm into that particular genre. So I was listening to, let's just call them old hymns. And they were singing, Southern gospel, thank you. We'll leave the bluegrass part out. Anyway, and they were singing about all of these concepts of heaven, which is one of the things I love about it. And there were so many songs about how one day it'll all make sense. We'll just know. I'm really starting to wonder if that's the case. Faith is so important to God that He wants us really strong in faith before we step into eternity. We need to build those muscles now. When my second daughter, Addie, was born, she went straight into the NICU because she wasn't breathing well. We lived in Colorado at the time at about 6,000 foot elevation. That was a problem. And she spent a few days in there, and I rarely left her side during that period of time, just praying that she would start breathing well, you can imagine. Well, I said, why isn't she breathing well? And they said she didn't practice enough in the womb. They go through this period of time when they're being, when the mother is beginning the process of the baby being born, it can go on for a couple weeks. And during that period of time, the baby practices a lot. Well, she was born rather suddenly, and she didn't get that practice time in. And so when she got into the world, she wasn't ready. She couldn't breathe well, and she needed help. Before we are born into eternity, we have to be able to breathe in faith. It takes practice. For Abraham, it took 25 years. Practice. If God would have said, you're going to have a son Isaac, and he showed up 9 months later, oh, that was great, God, thank you. Not much faith building there. But you look at all that we've talked about that has happened with Abraham over 25 years, the mistakes that have been made, the positive things that have happened. You look at all of this growth. We're going to see tonight, assuming I get there, of this great faith that has developed in this man that is beyond my faith. You look at that and you see all of this. That's because there was a promise that Abraham learned how to count on over the course of 25 years. This is a great story. The Lord, I love the way this opens. The Lord came to Sarah as He had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what He had promised. Are you surprised? Is anybody here surprised that the Lord did exactly what He said He was going to do? No, nobody is, except Sarah. She's surprised. Everybody else is like, yep, that's what we expected. Sarah became pregnant, bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the exact appointed time God had told him. Are we surprised? Nope, that's my God. That's what He does. Great. Abraham did exactly what he was supposed to do. He named his son, look at this, the one Sarah bore to him, very specific. He named his son, the one Sarah bore to him, he named him Isaac. The name means laughter, or it could mean cracking up, doubling over, LOL. What is that? Rolling on the floor laughing? That's what it means. When Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, as God commanded him. Are you seeing this pattern? God did what He said He was going to do. Abraham did what He said he was going to do. Isn't that great? That's faith. That's faith. God said He was going to do something. I'm ready to do my part. I'm just waiting. Wait until He tells me to go. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. I remember taking Hayden home from the hospital. I remember taking Lindsay home from the hospital. Oh, it was fun. So much fun. We were only in the hospital about a day for each one of them. It was super, super good, super easy. I mean, the birth was easy. The whole thing was just a kick. It was just so much fun. Getting them home. Oh, ask Wendy. Trust me, it was a kick. She had fun with those two. It was cool. That was just cool. Taking Addie home, though, that was something else. 3 days in the NICU. We didn't know if we were going to get to take her home. People were praying. Our pastor stopped by and prayed over us, prayed over the baby. Wendy'd been really sick too. We didn't know if she was going to get to go home. It was pretty rough. But then all of a sudden, it was a Saturday morning. All of a sudden, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I said, I'm taking my family home today. And I was there in the NICU, and so I was looking at Addie, and she was doing great. Breathing on her own, no help. All of her numbers were perfect. She was just doing great. Went and saw Wendy. She was feeling pretty good. She was still really weak, but I mean, she couldn't walk or anything at that point. She'd had quite a few complications. Almost lost them both in that day. But that Saturday, she was doing good. The pediatrician came in, and I said, I'd like to take my family home today. And she said, well, we'll see. And she checked everything over, and she said, okay, go ahead. You know, if anything goes wrong, you got to get them right back here, but you can take them home. They just need to rest. Oh, how good it felt. The joy. Can you imagine? Now, when Ishmael was born, there was certainly joy. I'm sure that was fun. But can you imagine Isaac? After waiting on this promise all those years, the joy. Can you imagine Sarah? People, she did not believe what God had said. Remember, God said, I'll be back in a year, and in that period of time, you'll be holding a baby. And she's like, yeah, right. Remember that? Now listen to what she says. Sarah said, God has made me laugh. This is a laugh of incredulous joy. Ha! You got to be kidding me. Can you believe this? That's the laugh. And everyone who hears will laugh with me. She also said, listen to this line. Who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? I don't know who did for 25 years. Tell her that. She didn't believe it for a minute, but it happened anyway because God promised. Listen, do you remember what Sarah's name was before God changed her name to Sarah? Sarai. She of the sharp tongue. What if she had believed right off the bat, like Abraham did? Remember, Abraham believed? God credited him as righteousness. Remember that? Changed his life, shaped his life, rattled the world. Hadn't happened yet. It was promised. And between the promise and the delivery, it shaped everything about him. What if she had believed in the beginning? I think she would have been a whole different lady. First of all, we wouldn't have had the whole Hagar episode. I can tell you that right now. I think everything would have been different for them if she just would have believed too. She missed out. She missed out on what God could have done. I have borne a son for Abraham in his old age, she says. Wow. Faith. Well, let's keep going because we're going to see how important that is. Now listen, I preached probably very poorly on this next section Sunday morning, and we're going to go through it. I don't have a ton of time I can spend on it, but it's just so important. I mean, it deserves some sermons and studies of its own. It's really one of the most important New Testament passages in the Old Testament. The child grew, that's Isaac, and was weaned, so he's about 3 years old at this point. And Abraham held a great feast for him on the day Isaac was weaned. This is pretty normal. Remember, in those days, kids didn't always live to toddlerhood, and they didn't always live to adulthood, and so there were these milestones that were celebrated. In some societies, they didn't even name the child until this point, but Isaac, because of the promise of God, he was named by the 8th day. Well, so there's this big celebration. Now the child is self-sufficient. He's on his own. There's huge spiritual application there. We who raise our children look forward to the time when they are spiritually self-sufficient. I mean, when my kids first started asking really solid questions about the Bible, when I first saw them surrendering themselves, dedicating themselves to Christ, that's worth a party. That's some seriously special and joyful stuff that we look forward to, getting our kids on their own in this. Well, anyway, so many things we could look into in this. You're going to have to study it on your own and ask lots of questions. Verse 9, when Sarah saw the son mocking, the one Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham, so she said to Abraham, drive out this slave with her son, for the son of this slave will not be co-heir with my son Isaac. Okay, remember that Ishmael at this point is probably about 17 years old. If you have had children, you know that a 17-year-old boy is going to mock a 3-year-old boy, especially if he feels like the 3-year-old boy is getting attention that he wants. That's just the way it is. And Sarah has one child. She is Mama Bear all the way. One very special, precious child. And so maybe she overreacts a little bit to this. Can't blame her. She says, he's not to be an heir with my son. Well, we know that Isaac is supposed to be the inheritor. But Ishmael's supposed to get stuff too. She said, no. There should only be one son involved here. Now, verse 11 says this was very distressing to Abraham because of his son. Yeah, he loved Ishmael, raised the boy for 17 years. Now understand that at 17 years old, he was old enough to begin his own household at this point. He was old enough that they could have at this point, at any point between now and probably 50 years old, they could get him married, he could be starting his own household, and Abraham would supply the means for him to start that household. So we're not talking about a little boy here. And Abraham has spent a lot of time with this young man, trying to grow him up to be a good man. So he's very distressed about it. But God said to Abraham, don't be distressed about the boy and about your slave. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her, because your offspring will be traced through Isaac, and I will make a nation of the slave's son because here's your offspring. Now pause for just a minute. I have heard some huge detrimental arguments made about this phrase, whatever Sarah says, listen to her. People are like, men, that means you need to listen to your wives. Whatever they tell you to do is the right thing. Oh, really? In that case, you better throw Genesis 3:17 in too. God said to the man, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, the ground is cursed because of you. Well, then you better throw that one in too and say, well, don't listen to your wife because you get in trouble with God. That is not what's trying to be said in either passage. That's not the point. Matter of fact, if you want to understand any of that, you got to go to Ephesians 5, where Paul says we're to submit to one another in the fear of Christ. Wives, submit to their husbands as to the Lord. Most husbands have that verse memorized. Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife. But then they forget verse 25, husbands, love your wives. It's agape. Throw yourself away for your wife. Give yourself away for your wife, as Christ loved the church. You're to submit to one another. So if you want to have that argument, start with Ephesians 5, and then we can come talk about this. That's not the point of this. God's telling Abraham something deeply, spiritually important. He says, go ahead and send them away. I'm gonna take care of Isaac. Go ahead and send them away. Now see the faith of Abraham in verse 14. Early in the morning, Abraham got up, took bread and a water skin, put them on Hagar's shoulders, and sent her and the boy away. Now you know this was extremely difficult for him. He said this was distressing. You know this was difficult for him. Notice that he does it early in the morning. Obedience delayed is disobedience. God said to do it, I'm going to do it right now. And he got up and he sent him away. He sent them with bread and water. By this point, Abraham is quite wealthy. Abraham could afford to send them with camels and servants and gold and tents and flocks and everything Isaac would need to start, Ishmael would need to start Ishmael's household. But he did not. Why? Ooh, that's good. Do you remember Galatians chapter 4? Do you remember Galatians chapter 4? Remember that in Galatians chapter 4, Paul tells us that this is an analogy. That this whole story, which is a true historical event that really happened, this whole story is here to teach us something. You see, Hagar represents, in Paul's words, the law. Hagar represents you doing the best you can on your own. That's what Hagar represents. You trying to make it happen on your own. Sarah represents living in the promises of God. Sarah and Isaac represent receiving the promises of God. So, if you are going to live in the promises of God, well, then you live like Sarah. Let's put it in terms that maybe fit just a little bit more where we're coming from. Hagar represents the best we can do in our flesh. Sarah represents being free and living in the Spirit. Which one are we supposed to do? Well, we're supposed to be free and live in the Spirit. That's what we're supposed to do. This is what, I'm not making this up. Check it out, Galatians chapter 4. Now, there's a couple of things that Paul says about that. And one thing he says is that the law will always persecute the freedom of the Spirit. So, if you think you can do as good as you can do in your flesh, and the preacher comes along and says, step out in faith, your flesh will always say, that's not going to work. You're just going to be a loser. You're just going to fall flat on your face. Don't jump into the arms of your Father you can't see, like we were talking about. That's not going to work. Your flesh will always persecute the Spirit. The two can't coexist together. So if you're going to live in the Spirit, you've got to send the flesh away. If we're going to have Isaac be the sole heir for Abraham, Ishmael's going to have to go. Do you understand the analogy that Paul's making? Do you understand the picture that he's painting here? So why did Abraham send him away with virtually nothing? With just a little bit of water and a little bit of bread. Why did he do that? Well, that's in Romans chapter 13, verse 14. Put on the Lord Jesus and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. We talked on Sunday about the two wolves. Remember the little boy that asked his grandpa, why am I always bad? And he said, well, there are two wolves inside of you. There's a white wolf that wants you to be good, and there is a black wolf that wants you to be bad, and they are at war with one another, fighting against one another inside of you. And the little boy says, which one's going to win? And he said, the one you feed is the one that wins. That's like hugely powerful for me. Because everything that we do is either going to feed the flesh or feed the Spirit. Everything we do. Turn on the TV, want to watch something on the TV, it's either going to feed the flesh or the Spirit. Grab something to read, flesh or Spirit. Flip through the news, flesh or Spirit. Little Instagram doom scrolling, fence or Spirit. Flesh or Spirit, not fence. Flesh or Spirit. That's the way that it works. Have a conversation with somebody, interpret what you want to say back to them. It's either going to be flesh or Spirit. Are you going to take offense? Are you going to be forgiving? Everything that we do will either feed the flesh or the Spirit. And so if you are one who truly battles, like so many of us have and so many of us do, I want to be good, like Paul says, but when I want to be good, evil is right there with me. And the very thing I don't want to do, I do. If you are one in that situation, then take Paul's advice from Galatians chapter 4 and follow the analogy that God's laying down for us here and send the flesh away. The two can't coexist together. You got to get rid of the one to have the other. Well, but I try. Okay, here's what you got to do. Quit trying and just feed the Spirit. Don't feed the flesh anymore. Just feed the Spirit. Well, how do I know if I'm feeding the flesh or the Spirit? Oh, come on, you know. Come on, you know. You know what's being satisfied. So, Abraham said, I heard what God told me to do. I'm going to do it right away. I'm going to make the decision right now. The idea is God spoke to him overnight. When he wakes up in the morning, he gets started on this right now because delayed obedience is disobedience. And he says, I'm no longer going to feed the flesh. From now on, I feed only the Spirit. Now, there's this other little, and that's as far as I can go into that analogy. You can keep digging. It's wonderful. We just don't have that kind of time tonight. There's just something else I really want you to see. I have children. I have a son. I can't imagine saying to him, you're on your own. Now, you all know he's getting married here, and it's really just a few weeks at this point. And I've told him, when you get married, you're off my payroll. I don't pay your cell phone bill anymore. I don't pay your car insurance anymore. You're on your own. And he knows that. And we've been talking about this for a while. And he needs to do this. And it's really important that he does this if he's going to be an adult. It still breaks his dad's heart not to be able to take care of him. It's so difficult to just turn your kids away. You feel like a betrayer. How could Abraham do this to Ishmael, who he loves? See you later, son. Good luck to you. How could he do this? Oh, you know how? It's the great faith of Abraham. What did God say? Twice to Abraham, I'll take care of Ishmael. I'll take care of him. I'll make him a great nation on your behalf. He's going to inherit not the blessing, but a blessing of Abraham. He's your son and you're my friend, and I'm going to take care of him. He'll be a great nation. 12 leaders or 12 rulers will come from him. Even before there's an Israelite nation, there will be an Ishmaelite nation. I'll take care of him. God says, or Abraham says, it hurts me to put you away, Ishmael, to send you away. It hurts me to do it. But I know that you couldn't be in better hands. If I kept you here and I coddled you and took care of you, you would not be in near as good of a shape as if I just release you into the hands of God. Do you see? Rochelle and I were talking. I've been putting in a few extra hours around here, and Rochelle said, I, as the leader of the board, tell you that after district assembly, you are to take extra days off. It's like, you don't have to command me. I'm down with that. Believe me. I could use them, and I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to sleep. Anyway, she said, we've seen pastors who never take a day off and burn themselves out. And we've seen some pastors who are barely here and don't burn themselves out. And it seems like the results end up being about the same. Well, she's got a point there. If I try to coddle the church, care for it myself, I'm just going to run it into the ground and kill myself in the process. But if I just release it into the hands of God, it's His church, they're His promises, it's going to be fine. You got to do it with your kids. You got to do it with your work. You got to do it with your work. You got to do it with everything in your life. So you know what? If I try to take care of it. Listening to a story today, a guy talk about the Apostle Peter. He's just one of my favorite guys. Simon Cephas. Just one of my favorite guys. Because, like me, he's got a big mouth and he does stupid stuff and he's really impetuous. And, I like that about him. It gives me hope. Anyway, you remember that scene where Jesus is walking on the water and Peter ends up walking on the water too? We give him so much grief for that. I give him tons of grief for that. What a loser. Here's the deal. You got to give him some credit. You realize he's the only disciple who got out of the boat? All of them could have. He was the only one who had faith enough to step out of the boat. Here's the thing this is what I caught listening to this other preacher that just, wow, that's cool. The faith of the Apostle Peter. When he was drowning, he was not far from the boat. Me, I would have swam for the boat, wouldn't you? I mean, it's the way the narrative goes, he hadn't taken but a step or two away from the boat. He could probably still just about reach it. Wouldn't you have been like, throw me a line, I'm in the water. Wouldn't you? No. He said, Lord, save me. Oh, what faith that he knew he could throw himself into the hands of Christ and he would be safer with Christ who's standing on the lake than he would be getting back to the boat, which had been his safety and security up till that point. Wow. I want to have faith like that. I can send Ishmael out because he'll be safer in the hands of God than he ever would if I was a helicopter parent. Oh, fantastic. Oh, how wonderful. Wow. That's great. Well, rest of verse 14. So she, Hagar, left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. It's hot. It's a desert. There's nothing out there. I don't know why she chose to go that way, but that's the way she went. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the boy under one of the bushes and went and sat a distance about a bow shot away, for she said, I can't bear to watch the boy die. Well, she sat at a distance, she wept loudly. So they'd been out, they got dehydrated, they got heat stroke. Doesn't take long out there. She is beyond depressed. I can't blame her. She went to bed the night before, honestly living in luxury. She got up in the morning and her master came and said, time for you to go. What? Didn't even get to pack. Off she goes. I don't blame her at all. Honestly, I really like Hagar. Just between me and you, I really find her to be a hero of the faith. Just between me and you. She's pretty cool. Anyway, well, here she is, Hagar, and she sets Ishmael down, and she's so depressed she just decides they're both going to die. And she goes a bow shot away. It's probably 20 yards away. She walks quite a distance. Says, I can't even listen to him anymore. And she goes and starts weeping loudly. I don't blame her at all, and neither does God. God heard the boy cry. That's interesting. Remember last time she was on her own? God heard her cry and came to her, and she named him the God who sees me. Remember that? Well, he not only sees her, he also hears Ishmael. God heard the boy. I wonder, he wasn't necessarily weeping. He was crying. I wonder if that means he was calling out to God. God, you said you were going to do something. Why don't you do something? You ever prayed like that? Honestly, I think that's fair. I mean, that's your emotion at the moment. Be honest. Why don't you do something? Well, God heard. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. Can you imagine? She's out here in the wilderness. There ain't nobody out there in the wilderness. All right? And all of a sudden she hears this voice thundering. Hey, Hagar! God, the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said, what's wrong, Hagar? Don't be afraid, for God has heard the boy crying from the place where he is. Get up, help the boy up, grasp his hand, for I will make him a great nation. Now listen, Hagar picked up some faith right here too. I like the fact that God says, what's wrong, Hagar? As in, what's the problem? Don't you remember back in, 16, where God meets with Hagar? And he says, hey, I'm going to make the boy a great nation. God told way back then, don't worry about Ishmael. I've got him covered. Why are you sitting here? Why are you sitting here in the middle of the wilderness just fussing? Come on, let's go. Get the boy and get moving. He didn't tell her where to go. Step out on faith and let's go. Okay, yeah, she does remember. She does remember. You know what, God, you're right. I'm being foolish. Let's go. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw well. So she went and filled the water skin and gave the boy a drink. There's this whole thing that I want to talk about God and women and wells. I mean, the first time we see God and woman in a well, it's Hagar. She's on her own, and God meets her by a well. Bir lahoi roi, well of the God who sees me. And he provides for her needs at the well. A downtrodden woman with no hope and no one to turn to, and nobody's going to take in a pregnant runaway slave. And God comes and redeems her at the well. And then see again, she is sure she's going to die. She is now a cast-out slave with a 17-year-old, essentially illegitimate son at this point. She has no one to turn to and no help. She is empty. She is dry. She is running out. God comes and meets her at the well. Skip a few and fast forward to John chapter 4, where it all culminates. And Jesus says, I have an appointment with a woman at a well. And Jesus meets a Samaritan woman who is the worst kind of woman. I mean, listen, there's Gentiles, there's Romans, and somewhere down at the bottom of the poo pit are Samaritans. And Jesus goes looking for a Samaritan woman who is immoral and illegitimate and a cast out even in her own society, who has no one to turn to and who is dry. And God meets her there. And he says, I am the well of living water springing up to new life. It all culminates there. Come to me, all who are thirsty, he says. All who are thirsty. Oh man, we could spend all night just on that one concept, how fantastic it is. But I'll tell you this. If you are feeling like, hey, I don't have any more hope here. I've tried everything. Everything's running out. It's not even my fault. I'm not even the one who did anything wrong, and I am in a bad place. And there is no hope. There is no hope financially. There is no hope relationally. Whatever it is, there is no hope, and I don't know what to do. And I have exhausted my resources, and my spirit is dry within me. My soul is dry within me, and I got nothing. I don't know what to do. Cry out to him. He will meet you at the well, and springs of living water will flow from within you. Meet you at the well. Where's the well? Well, it's right here. It's right here. Somebody says, God never speaks to me. Well, have you tried reading his word? Well, he never speaks to me verbally in a way that I can hear it. Have you tried reading it out loud? He'll meet you at the well. Let's keep going. There's one more bit of faith that I want you to see of Abraham. We are here. She went and filled the water skin, gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy. He said he would be. He grew. He settled in the wilderness and became an archer. He settled in the wilderness of Paran. We're told twice he settled in the wilderness. That's significant. Because the wilderness throughout Scripture is a picture of chaos and a picture of being outside of the world. And if God is involved, it's a picture of protection from the world. And we're told twice that this is where he chooses to go. He doesn't settle with other people in the confines of society. He would rather be in the wilderness, resting in what God had provided. We're going to see that with the Israelites in a little bit. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and there his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Of course, she was Egyptian. That was where she could go and get him a wife. He would have been a pretty good catch. He's still Abraham's son. We'll see that the two of them still have a relationship as years go by. Probably a mistake, getting him a wife from the land of Egypt. Probably a mistake. We see that mistake repeated later with another person. Probably a mistake. Why? Because Egypt is the world, remember? Egypt represents the system of the world. And that's where the wife came from, and we're going to see as time goes on that this was not a good influence for him. That's the end of his story. There's another story, well, at least for now, there's another story that I want to share with you in the rest of this chapter. Sounds like a really basic thing, but in it we see the faith of Abraham. Verse 22, at that time Abimelech, do you remember Abimelech? Remember when Abraham came into the land of the Philistines and he lied about his wife and it caused Abimelech all kinds of problems, and God came and spoke to Abimelech because at that point Abimelech had a greater fear of God than Abraham even did, and Abraham was embarrassed and ashamed. Well, verse 22, at that time Abimelech, accompanied by Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, so picture this, Abimelech, the king of the land, remember his name means father king or king father. He's the big kahuna of the tribes of the Philistines. He's the guy in charge. He brings the commander of the army of the 5 tribes of the Philistines. This is a big deal. This is an international summit. He comes to Abraham and he says, God is with you in everything you do. I find that interesting. How did Abimelech know that? Well, he watched Abraham. He watched Abraham. Remember the last time these two got together, Abraham is embarrassed and ashamed, and Abimelech's like, don't you even trust your own God? And now that a few years have gone by, Abimelech has watched Abraham, and it's changed his opinion of Abraham. See, to begin with, he thinks Abraham's kind of a loser, quite frankly. But now he sees by watching Abraham that no, this is a man who rests in God, and God watches out for him. Now that's significant to me because I have not always been a follower of Christ. And I have known a lot of people. And I have laughed to myself from time to time to think that maybe some of those people might stumble across us on YouTube and see me sitting here and say, that guy? Oh, no, they'd say, I know that guy. That guy? No. Well, maybe they know who I was, but they don't know who I am. And I could go to them and tell them, yeah, by the way, I found Christ and my life has been completely transformed and now I'm a preacher, and they would laugh at me. But maybe if they just watch my life for a few years, they'll see that yes, in fact, there is something different. Tom talks about his own family and him coming to faith and them being like, you got to be kidding me. But they've watched over the years and they see that this thing that he has is what they ought to have had all along. I find that so encouraging, and maybe you do too, because maybe you got some people in your past that you would just be so ashamed to meet again. Well, if you do meet them again, don't go around saying, well, now I'm the righteous, justified. You know, Paul says that's what some of you were, but I was washed and sanctified. No, if they ask, tell them. Just live in front of them. Just walk in the fear of the Lord in front of their eyes. And eventually they'll come back like Abimelech, who really didn't even need to bring the commander of his army because of this man that he now knows. But he has not forgotten. Verse 23, swear to me by God here and now that you will not break an agreement with me or with my children and descendants. In the back of his mind, I should say, Abraham does have a tendency to lie from time to time. So if we're going to make an oath, if we're going to make an agreement, if we're going to make a covenant, I want your promise, Abraham, by oath that you're going to keep the promise. See, here's the thing. Abraham now has a son, a legitimate son of his legitimate wife. That son is the heir of all he has. And remember, Abraham is considered a mighty king. Now there is a prince who will inherit the kingdom. Abimelech is concerned that when Isaac grows up and takes over Abraham's kingdom, that he's basically going to try to take over the Philistine kingdom as well. And he wants to make sure this doesn't happen. So he says, in the generations that go by, you in this land and me in this land together, as your posterity grows and becomes an even mightier nation, and as mine grows, we want to live side by side as neighbors, not as competitors. You see, Abimelech's a very wise person, a very wise king. He sees God has been with Abraham, and as strong as Abraham is, remember how he took out the 4 kings, Isaac could become even stronger. So before God blesses Isaac and makes him even stronger than Abraham, let's settle this matter. He says, as I have been loyal to you, so you will be loyal to me and to the country where you reside as a resident alien. Makes perfect sense. And Abraham agrees. He says, I swear it. But Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the well that Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech replied, I don't know who did this thing. You didn't report anything to me, so I hadn't heard anything about it until today. Now, this was a big deal. They live in a very dry part of the world. Wells are extremely important. I mean, they didn't have the technology we have now. You might dig 100 holes before any water comes up, and these were big, deep holes, and they were dug by hand through very solid ground. And you might get a well, but the water's not potable. So a well is extremely valuable. And water in those days was kind of a finder's keepers kind of a deal. If you're allowed to be in the land legally and you dig the well, that's your water. Well, apparently, some of Abimelech's servants had come and by force, through violence, seized a well that belonged to Abraham and his servants. And Abraham hadn't said anything to Abimelech about it. Why not? Why hadn't Abraham said anything to Abimelech? Well, last time he talked to him, he didn't have that great of a reputation. He waited patiently until the time was right to say something. There's a lesson in there for us as we do our business dealings. There's a right time to speak up. And when the right time comes, you take advantage of it. And this is what he does. And Abimelech says, I didn't know anything about it. Yeah, Abraham agrees. You can tell Abraham agrees because verse 27, Abraham took flocks and herds and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Remember we talked about this back earlier about how God and Abraham cut covenant. Same concept. These guys cut a covenant, took the animals, cut them in half, walked in between them, met in the middle, shook hands with the terms of the covenant on their lips, basically saying, if I fail or any generations after me fail to keep this covenant, may we be like these animals who've been cut in half. Remember? That's what they did. They cut covenant. Then, verse 28, Abraham separated 7 ewe lambs from the flock. And Abimelech said to Abraham, why have you separated these 7 ewe lambs? He replied, you are to accept the 7 ewe lambs from me so that this act will serve as my witness that I dug this well. So what he's saying is, I'm going to give you these lambs as evidence. They're some of the most expensive animals in the flock. These are lambs that are ready to bear children. So I'm going to give these to you, and this is my collateral. I don't know. This is my proof that what I'm telling you is true. The value of these lambs that I'm giving you. And here's the deal. These lambs are going to have lambs of their own. They're going to join your flock, and they're going to have lambs of your own. And they'll be marked as Abraham's lambs. And every time you look out into your flock, you'll see that some of those lambs were Abraham's lambs. And when you think about this well, you'll know it belongs to me. And if that well should get taken back into your possession, and you look out in your flock and see these, you'll know, no, that's not right. This belongs to me. Brilliant. Very good business dealing. Our lawyer back here is like, yeah, I'll sign off on that. Verse 31, therefore the place was called Beersheba, or Beersheba, because it was there that the two of them swore an oath. Beersheba. It means one of two things. It means either well of the oath or well of seven. The words oath and seven are extremely related in Hebrew. It's either the well of the oath or the well of seven. I think, as so often is the case in Hebrew, it's both. It's both. And one more thing. We've been talking about wells all night. Beersheba plays a huge role throughout Scripture. We're going to come across it again and again and again. You know what 7 is? It's the number of completion. It's the well of an oath. It's the well of 7, the well of completion. Put that in the back of your mind as we come up to Beersheba again and again in Scripture. It speaks to this concept of the living water. We'll get back there. Just put that in the back of your mind. It's free for now, but we're going to come back to it. After they'd made a covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, left and returned to the land of the Philistines. Listen to what Abraham does. Verse 33. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba. There he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham lived as an alien in the land of the Philistines for many days. He planted a tamarisk tree. What's it mean when you plant a tree? It means you're going to be there a while. I mean, you don't plant a tree for what it does for you today. You plant a tree for what it's going to do for you long into the future. You plant a tree to say, this is where I'm going to be, and I will take advantage of this tree one day. You see? And in the process, he called on the name of his Lord. He called on the name of the Lord, and he called him the everlasting God. This is a new name of God. The everlasting God. A new name. Every time he receives new revelation, he gives God a new name. He says, I see, God, that this goes on forever. This isn't going to end. You have given me Isaac. My posterity will go on and become the nation that you said it was going to be. You have given me a place to be here in the land where I'm protected by a covenant. I can be here a long time. I see that this goes on forever. You are the God that doesn't end. Your promises to me don't end. Your covenant with me doesn't end. This planting of the tree is an act of worship that Abraham has. He is worshiping God in saying, I mean, there's this cute little concept that just as God is a creator, so we try to create through our gardening. There's this cute concept that as Adam and Eve were sent to work the garden, we like to garden because it's deep in our soul. But it's even more than that with Abraham. I'm worshiping you, God, by putting down roots. You said it was going to go on forever. I take you at your word. It's going to go on forever. But even more than that, he lived in that land as a resident alien. He was quick to acknowledge, this is not my home. Oh yes, God has made me forever promise. He's made me forever promise, and that includes this land. But this is not my home, at least not yet. The promise is coming. Remember what it says in Hebrews? He lived as a resident alien in the land because he was looking for the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. He was like that man who was dying that we talked about. How do you feel, Dad? I feel like a kid on Christmas Eve. I know the promise of tomorrow, and I'm excited for the promise of tomorrow. And I know it's an everlasting promise, and I know it'll carry me through. And I know He's going to take care of my boys, both of them. And I know He's going to do everything He promised to do. And Abraham becomes a man of such great faith. Oh, waiting for Sunday morning, Easter Sunday morning, when we talk about the faith of Abraham one more time, and you see how mighty his faith has become. And in your mind, you, those who are here who study this with me, remember back to Genesis chapter 12, where he wouldn't even leave Haran. He stayed where it was civilized until he could do it no longer because he was afraid of what was going to come. And see how far he's come by the time we get to Genesis 22. Abraham was a man who was ready for heaven at that point. He could put down roots, knowing that God was an everlasting God, but those roots were going to pay off, oh, not today. Oh, not even 20 years from now, but in eternity. That's the kind of person that we need to be, and that's the kind of person that we see him become in that really cool little chapter of 21. Really looking forward to Easter Sunday morning. Listen, Good Friday service, you got to be here. We're going to talk about the death of Christ. We want to feel like we were there. Good Friday service, 7 o'clock on Friday. Easter Sunday morning, sunrise service. Sunrise service and the Easter service are not the same service. They're very, very different. Sunrise service, we want to feel like the first people who discovered the empty tomb. Easter Sunday morning, we're going to celebrate what we learned, what we felt like. We're going to celebrate what we felt like on Friday. We're going to celebrate what we felt like first thing in the morning. It's going to be fantastic. You want to be here. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for leading us through, getting us to this point, how we look forward to celebrating your resurrection. Oh, how we thank you for the hope that you've given us, hope that does not disappoint. Make us people of